Alright, today's video is going to be covering Chapter 1, Lesson 2, Solving Multi-Step Equations, and it starts on page 12 in your book. This is just adding one more step than what we covered in Lesson 1.1, which is solving equations using only one step. The part that we're adding is just multi-step, so it's just going to take 2 or 3 steps to solve for these equations. So let's recap. Of a tree after X amount of years is 1.5x plus 15. Okay. After how many years is the tree 24 feet tall? Alright, not too bad. What we're looking for real quick, our goal when we're solving these equations is to isolate the variable. In other words, to get the variable all by itself on one or the other side of the equal sign. And the way that we do that is we use inverse operations. Okay, so the inverse operation of addition is going to be subtraction, and the inverse operation of multiplication is going to be division, and vice versa. Okay, so we're just going to jump in, and on page 12, example 1, they start us off with a word problem, and in this word problem it says the height in feet is to solve for what x is. Okay? They give us part of the equation, and in the equation that they give us, they say that 1.5x, we can kind of read that as an x stands for years in this case. The tree in this particular problem grows 1.5 feet per year, and then it says we add 15. Okay, so it starts at 15 feet tall, and then every year after that it grows 1.5 feet. They want to know after how many years the tree is going to be equal to 24 feet tall. Okay, so here's our equation that we have to solve. Now, if this was lesson 1.1, we'd be able to solve this in one go, but we're going to have to solve this in multiple steps. This one is actually going to take 2. As long as you're okay with the stuff that we covered in the last video, you'll be okay here. You're just doing it more than once for the same problem. So if you think back to last video, the first step that we have to do is we have to undo that addition. To undo that plus 15, you'll remember that we'll have to do the inverse operation, or minus 15. And whatever you do to one side, you always have to do to the other side. So you're going to subtract 15 from both sides. That cancels out the 15 on this side, and it leaves me with 1.5x equals 24 minus 15. Well, 24 minus 15 is 9. Okay? I'm still not finished because I don't have my variable here, x, isolated. It's still being multiplied to the 1.5. So in order to undo that, I have to use the inverse operation. And since this is 1.5 multiplied by x, I need to divide by 1.5. Okay. I'm going to divide both sides by 1.5. That crosses that out over here, leaves me with x. And then I have to do 9 divided by 1.5. Well, I know that 1.5 goes into 3 twice. And if I multiply that by 3, then I would get 9. So 3 times 2 would give me 6. So our answer is 6. Now, if that didn't make sense to you, you could always just do it the normal way, the easier way, I guess, in this case, which would be to do, remember, top number divided by the bottom number. You'd have to, I'm looking at this right here, 9 divided by 1.5. Okay, if you wanted to check it, you're more than welcome to plug in 6 up in here for x, and you would do 6 times 1.5, and then you would add 15, and if you got 24, then you know that your answer would be correct. Get my pen here. you would do 9 divided by 1.5. So going, okay, that's what we're doing over here. Top number goes inside the house. I guess if you want to look at it like that, you have to move your decimal one spot, which means you need to move your decimal one spot here. Okay, bring it straight up, fill it in with a 0. Alright, now we need to ask ourselves, how many times does 15 go into 90? 15 goes into 9. 15 into 30 is 2 times. Then 30 to 45 is 3. 45 to 60 is 4. 60 to 75 is 5. And 75 to 90 is 6. So 15 times 6 is 90. There's no remainder, so my answer is correct at x equals. So the answer for this is going to be, after 6 years, the tree is going to be 24 feet tall. Moving on to the next one. The next problem we have, example number 2, is combining like terms. Alright, example number 2 is going to take a few more steps than the previous example, so we'll have to do a little bit of work on this one. The problem says 8x minus 6x minus 25 equals a negative 35. Okay, this is example number 2 on page 12. Well, the first thing that I would do is I would combine like terms. Okay, so I would get the ends together. This 8x minus 6x, I would combine that, and 8x minus 6x is going to leave you with 2x. Everything else stays the same. You just bring it on down a level, and you're left with 2x minus 25 equals a negative 35. I'm going to pause right here and tell you a little joke. What is 2n plus 2n? I don't know. The answer sounds 4n to me. Anyway, okay, that was cheesy, I know. Alright, let's get back to this problem. You have 2x minus 25 equals a negative 35. What you need to do is you need to get rid of this negative 25 to the other side by using the inverse operation. And so we're going to use the inverse operation. Instead of a negative 25, we're going to add 25 to this side. And we're going to add 25 to this side. Oh, ooh, let me redo that. I can't write here. We're going to add 25 to this side as well. Okay? On this side, it cancels out, leaving us with a 2x. And on the other side, we have a negative 35 plus 25. And we're left with a negative 10. Alright, well, we got one more step to do before we can actually say that we solved this problem. That last step is to isolate the x all by itself, because right now it's with the 2. Right now we have 2x equals a negative 10, and to undo that we need to use the inverse operation, or we need to divide by 2. So divide this side by 2, divide this side by 2. The 2's on this side cancel out, leaving me with just x. Okay. On the other side, we have a negative 10 is going to be divided by 2. So negative divided by a positive tells me that my answer is going to be a negative. And then 10 divided by 2 is just 5. So my answer is going to be x equals a negative 5. Okay, so the same thing we studied last lesson, except this one you're using the same rules. You're just adding a step or two in order to solve the problem. Let's look at the on your own example number 1. Number 1 says you have, let's see, what do you have here? Number 1, you have negative 3z. Okay, you add 1. And that equals 7. I want you to pause the video. This is going to take you 2 steps. Pause the video. See if you can work it out. Unpause it when you think you got the answer. Alright, let's see what you got. The first thing I would do is, since there's only one z, I would subtract the 1 using the inverse operation from both sides. Okay, that cancels out the 1 here, because if you have 1 and you take 1 away, you're just left with 0. So all I'm left with is 3z. On the other side, I have 7 minus 1, which gives me 6. Okay. Now our second step, because this is a multi-step, is I need to do division to separate the -3 and the z. So I'm going to divide by -3 and divide by -3. The 3's on this side cancel out, leaving me with z. And 6 divided by a -3 is -2. So if you got -2, congrats, you got the right answer. Good job. Moving on, let's take a look at number 3, give you another practice problem to see if we can get. You have a -4n minus 8n, so -4n minus 8n plus 17 equals 23. Okay? First thing I would do, pause the video, see if you can work it out. This one's going to take you about 3 steps to solve this one. So pause the video, work it out, then unpause it when you're ready. Alright, the first thing you should have done is you should have combined your like terms. So I would have first done -4n minus 8n, and then you would get a -12n plus 17 equals 23. Okay? After that, I would subtract 17 from both sides using the inverse operation. So -17 minus 17. Leaves that there. I'm left with -12n equals 23 minus 17 is 6. Okay, one more step here. All I have to do is divide by -12 from both sides. It cancels out. You're left with n equals 6 over a -12, and that can be simplified down to a -1/2. So you should have gotten n equals a -1/2 for the correct answer for number 3 of the on your own. Alright, we're going to add another step here. This is example number 3 using the distributive property. Alright, and with the distributive property, remember whatever is on the outside wants to be distributed evenly to what's inside the parentheses. Okay, so here we have 2 being multiplied by the 1 and the -5x plus 4 equals a -8. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that 2 and I'm going to first multiply it by the 1 that's inside the parentheses, and 2 times 1 is easy enough. That's 2. Okay, but now I need to take that 2 and I need to multiply it by the second term in the parentheses, and that's this negative. Don't forget this sign right here. That's the -5x. Okay, so step 1, 2 times the first term, which is 1, is simply 2. Then 2 times a -5x, and 2 times a -5x is a -10x. Once you got that out of the way, just write the rest of your problem that you haven't used yet. Bring everything down. Okay, so 2 minus 10x plus 4 equals -8. From this point, I would combine like terms, meaning I would take the 2 and I would combine it with the plus 4. So when you do that and rewrite it, you're going to have a -10x. The 2 plus the 4 is going to give you a plus 6, and that's going to equal a negative 8. Alright? From here, I would subtract 6 from both sides because you have to undo the addition. Remember, always look for what you can undo. Undo the addition, subtract 6 from both sides, cancels out here. You're left with negative 10x equals a negative 8 minus 6. Negative 8 minus 6 gives you a negative 14. Alright, and finally we're down to the last step where all we have to do is we need to get rid of that negative 10 by using the inverse operation, division, and dividing both sides by negative 10. When we do that, this cancels out, and we're left with x equals, okay, a negative 14 divided by a negative 10. Negative 14 divided by a negative 10, so a negative divided by a negative is going to be a positive. And I'll go ahead, you can do this in your head most likely, but I'll go ahead. Our answer should be x equals 1.4. Divided by 10. Okay, 10 goes into 14 one time, right? Bring down the 4. If you have to add a 0, put a decimal, bring down the 0. 10 goes into 40. Let me make that a little better. 4 times, so our answer is 1.4. Okay, so heading back. I'm going to challenge you to try number 4 of the on your own at the bottom of page 13. That problem reads like this: negative 3 x plus 2 plus 5x equals a negative 9. So pause the video, go through the steps, remember to distribute, combine like terms, and then use the inverse operation to move the numbers to the other side. Pause the video, work it out, see what you can come up with, then unpause it. Alright, let's see what you got. The first thing that I would have done is I would have distributed. I would have taken that negative 3 and I would distribute it to the x. So negative 3 times x would give me a negative 3x. Distribute it to the 2. Negative 3 times the 2 is negative 6. And then bring down everything that you haven't used yet. Your 5x and your negative 9. Okay? From this point on, I would combine my like terms. And my like terms are pretty easy to see. I have an x here and an x here. So I would do a negative 3x, okay? This can get a little confusing here. This negative right here goes with the 6, all right? So you need to look at the positive. You need to do the negative 3x, then you look at the 5x and the operation sign that comes before that. So what this is really negative 3x plus 5x. Negative 3x plus 5x. When you do negative 3x plus 5x, your answer, negative 3x plus 5x, is 2x. Don't forget to bring down that minus 6, equals a negative 9. Alright? Now we need to solve this by moving the numbers over to one side so that we can isolate x on its own side. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add 6 because it's the inverse of subtraction. Add 6 to this side, add 6 to this side. This cancels out and it leaves me 2x. On the other side, you have a negative 9 plus 6. Negative 9 plus 6 leaves me with negative 3. Alright, we got one more step in order to finally solve this problem, and that's to get rid of the 2. And when I read that, it says 2x equals a negative 3. So 2 times x equals a negative 3. Using inverse operations, I know I need to divide both sides of the equal sign by 2. That'll leave me with x equals negative 3 over 2. You can leave it like that, or you can write it as a negative 1.5. Same thing, doesn't matter, they'll both be correct in the end. Okay? Anyway, I hope you guys understood it. I hope you got it. As long as you understood the content in lesson 1.1, you should be able to do this, because it's just adding 2 or 3 steps to the whole process in order to get to the final answer. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.